Hi, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the solution for problem 24 in chapter 45 in my book. That's on page 434. This is a really good problem. This is going to be a fun one to work through. So here's the data that we're provided with. As always, I've created my own documentation page and I've named this file in a way that fits into my OneDrive file structure, and it's saved there. So here's the data. A little bit of cleanup required. I'm going to get rid of these empty rows and columns. Looks like there's a typo here in our data. We have NFL players, their position and salary. This is just called J. So I'm going to rename this as player name so it's clear as to what we're looking at. So there's quite a few things we're asked to do here. First of all, create a drop-down menu from which a player can be selected. So that's straightforward enough to do. I'll just copy this here. And so the way that we can create a drop-down menu is to use a validation rule. So let's go to data validation. So what names will be allowed are from a list. Okay, and the list is right here. Okay. And we'll add an error alert. I'm actually going to stop the user from proceeding. And the message that I'll enter here is please, I guess I'll say player not included on master list. Please update master list for proceeding. Notice here, I don't tell the user what the acceptable names are. Instead, I let them know that that name's not on the list and they need to refer to that. They need to update that list before they can proceed. So I'll say, okay, now let's test it. Okay, so here's the box, here's the drop down, and there's all the names, and we can see that they match here. Okay, so all of those names are there. So we can pick one. I just randomly picked one. So the next thing that we need to do is create a formula that shows the player's position and salary. So it has to return these two items. So I'll copy this and put them right here. So when we enter a particular player's name or select the player's name, it's supposed to populate the position and the salary here. I'm going to use a VLOOKUP to do that. So I'm going to name this range. This is the data that I want to look up from, and I will name this, I'm going to call this a salary table. Okay. So now we get to do one of our favorite things, a VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP. So we are going to look up the player name. And in fact, I realized I've missed an opportunity to name that cell. And I think I'll do that now. So I'm going to stop doing my VLOOKUP and I'm going to name E2 player name. Okay. So now we're ready to do our VLOOKUP. So equals VLOOKUP. So we want to look up the value in E2, which we just named. So I'm going to click F3 to call up the names. We want to look up player name, okay, comma. The place we want to look up from is this table over here. So I'm going to click F3 and it'll bring up my named ranges. I want to look it up in the salary table. Okay. So now we've seen that our salary table is highlighted here or selected, comma. I want to return the value in the second cell. So player name is the first cell, position is the second cell. So it's number 2 here. And now I get to pick, am I looking for an approximate match, in which case I'll select true, or am I looking for an exact match, in which case I'll select false. In this case, I'm looking for an exact match. I want to know the exact position and salary for a given player. So in this case, I'll select false. Close my bracket, enter. So typical best practice is to include an if error statement. I don't need to do that in this case because my data validation is such that I could not enter a name in here that wasn't on the list. And I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to enter my own name. It stopped me. It says, wait a minute, that player name is not included on the list. You have to update the list before you proceed. So I'll cancel that. Okay, so now we've included a lookup for the position and we need to do something similar for the salary. And in fact, it's going to be almost the same. So equals VLOOKUP. We're going to click F3 here. We want to look up the player name. We want to look that up from the table, salary table. We'll say okay. In this case, the salary is the third column over. So player name is 1, position is 2, salary is 3. 3. Once again, I'm looking for an exact match. And similarly, I don't need my if error because of the validation rule that I have in place. But I will format this salary as dollars, because that makes the most sense. Kind of a funny joke. Okay, and let's test this. Let's pick Greg Olson, because we'll be able to check this work. Oh, good, I should make this a little larger so that all of the values fit. So Greg Olson, TE, I think that's going to be tight end. And then there's the salary, so it does match. Okay, so that's one part of the question. Create formulas that show the player's position and salary. So we have done that. Create a pie chart based on the pivot table that shows the percentage of salary paid to each position. Okay, so that's a big task. Let's start with the pivot table first. So the data that we're going to use is going to come from this area. So let's see if we can insert a pivot table. I'm wondering if I can use my table name. Let's see. I think the issue I'm going to come across is I don't have the titles included. But let's try it. Yeah. So the problem is when I named that table, I didn't actually include the titles. So this won't work. Let's get rid of this. Oops, it doesn't want me to do that. Okay, I think I figured out how to delete the pivot table. So there's a couple of things that I could do. I could change the data source, and I would do that by selecting the data right here. But I can also delete this pivot table by selecting the entire pivot table, and then here I can click delete. So now it's gone. Okay, so let us select the data. I'm going to select all of the data, and I'm going to insert a pivot table. Now I would like to select where I will drop that pivot table. That will be right here. I'll say okay. Now when we look, we can see that we actually have our titles here. So we have the player name, position, and salary. So what we're asked to do is create a pie chart that shows the breakdown of the salary by position. So let's drop the position into the rows. Oops. Okay, so here we have all of the various positions. And now we need to drop the salary in. And so the way I'm doing this is I am left clicking on the title and I'm just dragging it. Okay. Whoops. So made a mistake here where I actually want the salary to be is not along the columns. I want it in the values section, but it's okay. I can just drag it. I can pick it up from here and drag it down. Okay, it's fixed now. So let's call this position. Okay, and this is sum of salary. Something else we can do, I'm going to click on the arrow, the down arrow box beside position, and we can sort. So we can sort alphabetically by position if we want. I'm not sure that that makes a lot of sense to me. I think I would rather have it sorted by salary, but let's just leave it like this for now, and we'll come back to sorting, okay? So let's go to Pivot Table Analyze. And you can drop in a pivot chart. All different types of pivot charts that we can select. I would probably opt for something like a bar graph, but we're specifically asked in this case to create a pie chart. So let's do what we're asked to do. So there we are, and we'll say okay. So I noticed a few things about this chart. It does not follow our best practices, and we're going to tidy that up in a minute here. But when we create a pie chart, we typically have the highest values starting from what I would call the 12 o'clock position and following along on the right-hand side. So let's sort our data accordingly. So I'm clicking on the pivot table on the position. Okay, and we had sorted it from A to Z, but we have other sort options, and I'm going to select that. Oops. And now we can sort in ascending or descending. So I'm going to sort in descending order. And if we click this down arrow, we can sort it by position or sum of salary. And I'm going to sort it by sum of salary. When I click OK, I'd like you to watch what happens to the data and what happens to this chart. So I'm going to click OK. It's updated. Okay. So let's take a look here. Right away, we know we need a better title than this. So what this is percentage of salary by position for Carolina Panthers 2016 season. My goodness, season. Okay, and then I'll say prepared October 30th, 2020. And whoops, went a little too far here. All right. Just going to decrease the size of this bottom part. Okay, so here we go. That looks a little bit better. It's a little bit difficult to tell what each of these sections pertain to. So we can update that. I'm going to click on the chart, and it's kind of difficult to tell, but there's a chart elements plus button that or symbol that comes up, just like any other chart that we use. And we have options around data labels. So that looks like a mess, and that would not be one of our best practices. So let's actually look at more options for data labels. And there's all sorts of options here. So I would suggest you don't have to memorize what each option does, but let's just kind of play around with this a little bit. We can add the percentage. That actually just makes things worse. I think we don't want that, and we don't want the value. Category name, series name. Series name is not adding value. So category name provides us with the position. And I think that that is the most clarity we can get with this chart. So I'm going to close this. So as I'm looking at this, I realize now, I'll try to make this a little bit larger. It'll make it easier for us to be able to read it. I realize now that sum of salary, it did not format this as a dollar value. And I would like to do that. Whoops. I'll highlight all of this, and I'll make it a dollar value. Okay. Now, the very last thing is create a pie chart based on this pivot table that shows the percentage of salary paid to each position. We've done that. When you add new data and refresh your pivot table, all of your work should automatically update. So let's test that. I'm going to change the data here for the quarterback because this is the biggest number, and I'm going to do something silly like change it to $2. I'm going to change it back, but when I change it to $2, okay, nothing has happened. So what we actually need to do is, click on, we need to click on our pivot table, and I'm going to right click. And there's an option to refresh. And when I refresh, I like to be able to do that so you can see it. When I refresh this data, we're going to see a change in the sum of salary and also in the chart. So remember, I changed the quarterback. So this is 13. I'll just type it over here for fun. 13, whoops, goodness sakes, 13,166,666. Okay. So when I click refresh, we're going to see this number change and the pie chart change. So refresh. Okay, it did change. Quarterback actually dropped significantly on the list. I don't know where it is now. I guess it's, oh, at the very bottom. Of course, that makes sense because we've now made our quarterback our worst paid player. That's not what we want to do. Okay, I'm going to undo those changes now. The reason I did those changes was to test to make sure that when we refresh the data, it was all connected. Okay, and it was. So that completes the solution for problem 24. This is a really good review if you're not sure on how to create VLOOKUPs. And then of course it has our new content around pivot tables and pivot charts. Thanks.